Hi guys, are you all recovering after last night? Stayed up as late as I could to watch all the results roll in. I must admit I was pretty nervous. At 10:02 I waited for Indale to announce the exit poll. I was absolutely thrilled, and the results came right in line with my predictions. So as you know, at the beginning I said Boris would win. I said it would be a impressive majority. As it went on, I said the majority would be between 34 and 50, probably more towards 50. And if we take 326 as being what's needed for a majority, he did get almost 42 above that. So that was good. I'm going to, in this broadcast, just do some positivity. Do a slight prediction for Brexit and the SNP, and just chat a little bit more about the results and my predictions and how it all played out. What I was very interested in is the eternal optimism of Remainers. I think we have to hand it to them. They are always optimistic. I noted on Sky News, a Remainer was saying that because the influence of the ERG will now be diluted because there's so many more Tory MPs, this means Boris will rush for the centre ground and get us a soft Brexit. I totally disagree with this. I think now that he's got a majority and you can't have Remain MPs from Labour and the Conservatives rushing over to have secret meetings with the EU all the time to undermine the Brexit, he's got so much more bargaining power, and even Guy Verhofstadt seems to have recognised this. He said the people have spoken and that the European Union better now cooperate with the UK. So I think now we have the greatest chance that we have had for a very good deal, because Boris now has a stonking majority. He can walk away. He can say, damn it, we were leaving if we don't get a great deal. And I also think the way that Boris is going to cling on to the seats that he has now won in the North, in the Midlands, is to get a great deal. Because if we stay in Brexit in name only, it means we can't take advantage of everything that Brexit offers us. And as I said in my previous broadcast, the North have already factored in a Boris win. They are hungry in the North. GDP is going up there. They're ready for a wall of investment to come in. And I think it's really going to revive our economy and our manufacturing. I think Boris knows that the only way he can win his next term and keep all his new voters in working class areas happy is to deliver a substantial Brexit that increases jobs and prosperity for all the country, and that is what will unite people. So no, I don't believe he's going to rush to the centre ground and get us some soft Brexit. Although, like I say, you've got to hand it to these Remainers. They are optimistic. So I think we've shattered the whole 52-48. We were always told the margin was so slim. I think we now realise that the country, a lot of Remainers want to get on with it. And I think I always said the 52 was more significant because people who wanted Brexit really were up for change, highly motivated, had resisted all the fear stories, had resisted all the media propaganda, had resisted being told that we were somehow mentally inept or racist or bigoted. We'd resisted all the pressure and we still voted for Brexit. So our vote counted for more. When a lot of Remainers voted rather lackadaisically, rather passively for the status quo, just thinking, it would be easier, or, oh, well, we may as well remain, it's not so bad. I feel their vote wasn't as staunch. While they probably were 10 to 15% of ardent Remainers, the other 48% were really neither here nor there and are quite ready to embrace. They believe in democracy more than they believe in remaining, and they want to embrace it and move on. Okay, I said Nicola Sturgeon would do well, and the SNP did do very well. However, I think going forward, Nicola is going to be a victim of her own success, because I think the more power the SNP have in Scotland, the more they're going to push their luck, the more people in Scotland will wake up to the fact that their highly progressive policies are not really what most people want. And I think come the next election, people will have had too much of the SNP and their calls for a second referendum and their divisive tactics, that they'll be ready to turn in their droves to both the Tories and the Lib Dems in Scotland. So I think that while the SNP did very well, they could be victims of their success going forward, and that is an astrology prediction. Nigel, of course, I think the Brexit Party played a role. I don't think they necessarily stopped the Tories getting any seats, apart from maybe Hartlepool. And I think in many cases they drew Labour votes away and helped the Tories to get in the North. So Brexit Party have played their role. Yes, as you know, I predicted that at some point Nigel would be an MP. However, that prediction was based mainly on a January election taking place, and we had the December election. However, let us keep watching Nigel, because, you know, he did do that deal with Boris to withdraw all the Brexit Party MPs in the south. So you never know what Boris is going to give him in exchange. So let's just wait and see what happens with Nigel in the new year, although I honestly don't see much happening with the Reform Party as such, but I think Nigel will be pretty busy. Where I did get it wrong is with Jo Swinson. I predicted something a little bit more favourable for her, but who knows? Maybe there's a silver lining to her cloud, and in January maybe she'll be getting a much better job, better than leading the Lib Dems anyway. So we'll have to see. So that was my prediction in general. So I wanted to have a look at a few political points quickly and then end with something really enthusiastic. Rule Britannia, I'm going to call it. Just like I say, one of my best quotes of the night was, "They think it's Bolsover. Well, it all is now." I thought that was quite a good play on the fact that Bolsover was taken from Dennis Skinner after he was going to be one of the Tory grandfather of the House. Literally, he'd been an MP for so many years, and that was quite a shock. Bolsover, of course, being a key Brexit area. As for the Labour Party, are they in denial or what? They want to blame this whole thing on Brexit and people not understanding their Brexit policy, when it's a lot more than that. And I think Labour continue to think that their voters are stupid. People rejected Labour on a number of levels, but just like the media, who can't see it because they're stuck in their metropolitan bubble of the elite and they don't understand the rest of the country, they also don't see it. Labour voters are not stupid. They know all these policies have to be paid for. They understood that, and they were wondering where the money was going to come for all this free stuff, for all these promises. Also, you cannot insult your way to victory. Hillary didn't do it by calling people deplorables, and Labour can't do it by consistently telling the Leave voters in the Labour heartlands that they are bigoted, racist, stupid, blah, blah, blah. You're never going to win doing that. Labour also can't win because their campaign was entirely negative. You don't win with negative campaigning and fear-mongering. They were constantly fear-mongering about the NHS, banging on with their cliche that it's not safe in Tory hands, and fear-mongering about services, all sorts of things, and it became entirely negative. That's always a turn-off. Also, identity politics doesn't work. It didn't work for Hillary. Even for the French Communist Party, they were fairly successful until they turned to identity politics, and that's when it went downhill. Labour insists on dividing people into groups, then playing people in the groups off against each other. Labour seem to think that people from a certain group think the same way, but they don't. Not all black voters have the same opinion. Not all female voters have the same opinion. Not all gay and lesbian voters have the same opinion. And while, yes, on the right, people often seem to think that the Muslim voters vote in blocks, that's not even true, because on an anecdotal level, I know that Muslim voters have minds of their own and also don't vote as a bloc. And Labour don't seem to understand this. I mean, we know that it came out, Tony Blair and Labour, they had that famous sort of notion that came out that they wanted diversity to rub the middle-class Tory voters' nose in it, and they thought diversity would be their strength going forward, because immigrant voters would always vote for Labour, and it would mean a Labour Party always being in a strong position and Tories never being able to get in again. And so that's why Labour has focused on the immigrant vote, but they've rejected their heartlands, their traditional Labour voters, to do that. And once again, Labour are making the mistake. Not all immigrants think the same. So not all immigrants are going to vote Labour anyway. And isn't this really the key to racist thinking that because people look a certain way or they're immigrants, they're all going to vote the same way or think the same way? No, they don't. And that's why identity politics is a mistake. I also think, again, Labour, they're courting the intellectual elites, the professors, people in the media, but all those people don't run businesses. They're focusing on those people who are very ideologically driven and who probably live in a world where they don't really have to work with business or use their common sense. And therefore those people can afford, if you're a professor, you can afford to be highly ideological or highly, what would you call it, not very practical, because you work with ideas. You don't work with reality. So that all those people who work in an ideas or in a creative world and an academic world, they're far more likely to fall for Labour propaganda or Labour policies because they're not in the real world. So they need real world policies for real world people. It's no use appealing to these intellectual elites in Cambridge or in the media, so-called. I also think that the Labour voters weren't wooed by all this green stuff. You can't run your party policy based on what Greta's doing. I know she gets a lot of attention, but she doesn't represent the views of many. She's not an elected person at the end of the day. She's self-appointed and appointed by the forthcoming green elite who plan to, or green industrialists who want to make a lot of money off green technology. So Greta is not really representative of anyone you're going to be voting for, so why are they listening to her and people like her? Yes, Labour try and woo the university types that don't have a lot of life experience and aren't paying tax yet. Great, but again, they are neglecting their core voter. One Labour guy on Sky News, I don't remember his name, he said, we're the Labour Party, we're not the benefits party. Well, he said it, not me, but yes. So, will Boris keep the working class vote that he's won up in the northeast? Well, my contention is that there's not a very big difference between working class voters and middle class voters. They are far more in common with each other than they have with the metropolitan elites, the neoliberal elites like all the Remainers, and yeah, so they're far more in common with each other. What do they care about? They both work very, very hard. For most of the middle class and the working class, the amount they pay in tax is a significant amount of their income. Therefore, they're worried about taxation. They want, you know, a lot of the working class and small middle class people are aspirational. They want success for small businesses, for medium-sized businesses. They want a thriving economy. They don't necessarily care about the GDP. They care about the economy as it affects them. I think a lot of these voters I'm talking about, middle and working class, are skeptical about bankers, about what they do, about whether it really contributes to the economy or whether it actually harms the economy. They would both like to see an injection for entrepreneurs, an improvement in manufacturing, an improvement in the real economy, including fishing, agriculture, lots of those different things, not such a focus on services. That, I think, unites working and middle class. If Boris can grasp this, he can do really well. I think that most middle working class voters also agree that wealth is far too concentrated at the top. The rich are becoming richer and it's not trickling down. So I think a lot of us believe in trickle-down economics, but we know it's not working anymore. We want to know why it's not working, and we think that if a government, a Tory government, can put that right, it's the key to prosperity. We also believe that we don't necessarily want the government to give us opportunities, but we think there should be a ladder there that enables us to work our way up with our hard work, skill, intelligence, whatnot. And I think maybe grammar schools is the way that could be done. I'm not sure. But what we want is a ladder up, and we want trickle down happening again. So if that's addressed, we don't believe in going after the billionaires and taxing them to death and driving them away and driving corporations away with high taxes. But we do want trickle down restored. So what else unites the working class and most of the middle class? It's common sense. It's that immigration needs to be sensible, to be controlled, and for us to have a grip over it and for us to create infrastructure to cope with it. So immigration, of course. National identity matters to us. So does crime, law and order, the NHS, of course, but I think that concerns everyone. And also what Labour forgot is that traditional Labour voters are not necessarily progressive socially or excessively liberal. A lot of them are small C conservatives. And that's been forgotten in chasing after these very progressive liberal policies that only really interest the metropolitan elite or the media lovies. Ultra woke policies are a turn-off for both the middle and working class. So I think there's a big crossover between the Tory right, the Labour working class. This was recognized by Trump, why he won Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which is why he's going to win Minnesota, New Hampshire and Nevada when it comes to the next election as well. You can see, similar to our Labour Party, the AOC and the Klan over with the Democrats are getting increasingly woke, increasingly radical, which means that it's very easy for the Trumps of the world, the Borises of the world, to scoop up the small C conservative working class, the middle class, and the common sense voter in the rest of the country away from the big cities. Any politician who can identify that is going to do really well going forward. So at the end of the day, the US and the UK are, should I call it right-wing countries? I don't mean extreme right-wing, but I mean they're more to the right than to the left. They are always going to reject socialism, and that's why Labour's been rejected. I don't think, though, that Labour are going, they're so controlled by momentum, and they are so now ideologically addicted to the hard left. I don't think they're going to recognise this for a long time. So I'd like to end by saying, do you know, guys, you saw that HSBC advert. I'm not going to quote it directly, but it goes along the lines of, Britain is a small island where we drive German cars, we drink Colombian coffee, we poke away at Korean tablets, we watch American TV, we enjoy French wine, we love our Egyptian strikers, you know, the football ones, we love our Portuguese managers, we like our Chinese flat screens, we wear our Italian clothing, and tikka masala is our favourite dish. The UK is just a lump of land in the middle of the sea. That is Joe Swinson politics. That is the politics of Jeremy Corbyn and the hard left, who basically don't believe in this country or think that this country is fundamentally a good thing. And that's what working class patriots, the middle class, believe, that this country means something, that this country has punched above its weight, and there's a lot to be proud of. And just in case you've forgotten, I want to mention some of the things why this country is great. The mother of all parliaments, our parliamentary model has been replicated around the world. Our fantastic common law system also replicated in America, Canada, South Africa, Australia, with the jury trials, the right to remain silent, the right to bail. English is the language of the world. It's the language of business. We were the country that abolished slavery. Some countries, for example, Mauritania and Africa, only abolished slavery in the 60s, and Saudi Arabia only in the last century. The UK, always a leader in human rights. We have Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the first web browser. He had a dream that came to fruition in the latter half of the 80s, and there we go, the web. We have film, we have fashion, some of the greatest bands from Queen, the Beatles, the Stones, Elton John, Rod Stewart, Andrew Lloyd Webber and his fantastic musicals. Literature, the St. James Bible, which shaped thinking in the English-speaking world and shaped culture, one of the best-selling books of all time, commissioned by Elizabeth I, printed in the UK. We have Shakespeare, J.K. Rowling, Enid Blyton, Agatha Christie, Barbara Cartland, some of the biggest-selling writers of all time. Isaac Newton, obviously British, the steam engine, invented in Britain, the agricultural revolution in Britain, the first torpedo jet engine invented here, the first telegraph, the telephone, the chocolate bar was invented here, the light bulb, the first working electric motor, the hydrogen cell, the very first factory, and many inventions that caused the revolutionizing of the textile industry and the uplifting of the north of England as a result. The Whittle turbojet engine, the invention of vaccines and the discovery of immunology, the invention of stainless steel, the tin can, which we always use, the hydraulic press, the invention of cement, a British thing, the macadam road, which was the biggest improvement in roads since the Romans built roads, the spoked wheel, which you see in your bicycles, carbonated water, the first successful non-air glider flight. We defeated Hitler. And I say we because if you were alive and paying tax before 2005, you helped pay the war bill, because we were paying our war bill, our war debt back to America until 2005. And you know, France didn't pay anything. Before Hitler invaded, they had all their gold shipped to Canada. They didn't pay. We paid to free the world. I know that our allies, America, loaned us money. Russia paid in a huge amount as well with their death toll. So, but yes, we financed it. And any of us, our parents or grandparents that were taxpayers before 2005, we financed the war effort, like I say. Also defeated Germans in World War One. What about our sports? China invented football, but we refined the game, popularized the game, and it was the British that came up with the rules. Let's have a shout out to Warwickshire, the oldest tennis courts in the world, and in rugby, where the game of rugby was invented. What about cricket that we gave the world? As I say, tennis, so some of the greatest sports we've given the world as well. And what can we say? No one does pomp and ceremony and wonderful royal events, fantastic events at St. Paul's Cathedral, fantastic Christian events. No one does it better. No one does it like us, huh? I always look back to the Olympics in 2012 and say that epitomized the amazing spirit, the absolute love of sport, and the way this country can come together to support athletes of all different backgrounds who all love this country, come to this country. The huge pride, not only in the sporting achievement, but in the way that our Paralympic Games was the most successful Paralympics ever, as well attended as the Olympics for the able-bodied, showing our support for the disabled. That is what's great about this country. All the flag waving, the wonderful organization, the huge spirit, the way the athletes and the sports were supported, and how everyone just lapped it up and gave it their all. There's something special about this place. And of course, animal rights, animal welfare. We're also a nation of animal lovers and nature lovers too. So I'd like to end with, I promised you this once before, but I found it here. This is what Seb Coe said at the closing ceremony of the Olympic Games. He said, "Finally, there are some famous words you can find stamped on the bottom of a product. Words that when you read them, you will know mean high quality, mean skill, mean creativity. We've stamped those words on the Olympic and Paralympic Games of London 2012. London 2012, made in Britain." And that was Lord Coe, his speech at the closing of the 2012 Games. And I think that's what we've all got to remember and be proud. And I think that Boris is the person who's eccentric enough and he's a maverick enough to bring people together in a united spirit, because I believe he believes in Britain. He understands our history. He's a student of history. He's a student of language. He understands what is great about this country and what should and will be nurtured. And I think when we look at Corbyn, we see fundamentally a person who doesn't even believe in or fundamentally like this country. I see a lot of Labour people on Twitter. Immigration is what makes this country great. That's all they think. Well, I'd say immigrants come here because this country is great and they want to contribute to what's great about it. So I'm very positive about the result going forward. I feel positive about Brexit too. And the reason I think it's going to happen is not just about what's happening in this country. There's a gear change, a total sea change and a shift across Europe where people are rejecting the fundamentals behind it. They're either rejecting the neoliberalism or the lack of democracy, or the policies in general. I mean, come on, let's be honest. There's a lot we don't like. There's a lot not to like. It's being rejected. So onwards and upwards, feeling very positive, and hope you enjoyed this vlog. Plenty more to come. Yeah, great win. Thanks to you guys. Thanks for all the positive comments. Keep them coming.